and welcome to my kitchen. Today is the first day of autumn. By the time you see this, hopefully it will feel like autumn. In honor of my favorite season, I'm going to be cooking 3 of my favorite fall dishes. So come along and let's start cooking. The first thing we're going to make is pumpkin spice granola. It's so easy to make. It comes together in less than 10 minutes and it's so delicious. So here are the ingredients that you're going to need. For the granola recipe, you're going to need 4 cups of rolled oats. It's really important that you use rolled oats and not the quick cooking oats because the texture will be different. Next, I added some pepitas or sunflower seeds or whatever seed you want. And for the nuts, I'm using pecans. I have used walnuts in the past and that worked really great. I don't like the really large chunks, so I'm breaking it up into pieces. What I love about this recipe is how versatile it is. You can really add whatever fruit or nut or spices you want. Have you made granola before? And if so, what are your favorite additions? For the spice, I'm using a pumpkin pie spice and cinnamon. But you can certainly add or make your own pumpkin pie spice by adding nutmeg, cloves, cinnamon, ginger, and mix that all up together. Next, I'm going to add a half cup of oil. I'm using coconut oil, but you can also use canola oil or whatever oil you prefer. Just make sure that the taste is not too strong. And then I'm also going to add a half cup of maple syrup. And some people do use honey, and I bet that's really delicious. I don't love the taste of honey, so I'm choosing maple syrup. Once that's all mixed together, you're going to put it on a pan. I've used parchment paper before and it's worked really well. So you're going to get it all spread out on the pan and make sure that it's spread out evenly for consistent cooking. To bake your granola, you're going to put the sheet pan in a preheated oven at 350 degrees and we're going to start out at 10 minutes. One of the things I try to do is clean up as I go, and that way I don't have a big mess waiting for me after I'm done cooking all this delicious stuff. So let's wash up these little dishes. Do you wash as you go when you're cooking, or do you wait to wash everything at the end? Or are you lucky enough to have help like I did this day? My son asked if I needed help, and absolutely. So enjoy this footage of a young man working hard to help his mom. After 10 minutes, check on your granola and give it a good stir. Then we're going to put it back in the oven and bake it for an additional 10 minutes. Once the second round of baking is over, take it out and add whatever dried fruit you like. I'm adding craisins on this day. And keep in mind, it will harden as it sits. That's it. That's how easy it is to make homemade granola. After it's done cooling, which will take about an hour or two, I'm going to put them in these mason jars or you can use any airtight container and I'll put it in my pantry. So I'm going to fill this up for me and I'm going to give my daughter some as well. She'll be so happy for it. And then you can just serve it with whatever yogurt you like. I wish you could smell my house right now. It smells amazing. So the next recipe we're going to make is pumpkin bread. I've been making this for many years and it is a favorite of my entire family. So that's what we're going to be making. All the recipes that we're making together today will be in the description box. They are not my own. I do substitute some things, but I will leave the link to the recipes in the description box for you. All right, let's make pumpkin bread. Here are the ingredients that you're going to need to make the pumpkin bread. This recipe calls for 2 loaves, so that's what we'll be making today. This is not a healthy recipe. I just want to warn you. I mean, we're using 3 cups of sugar. Today, I'm using a cup of brown and 2 cups of white sugar, and I'm going to see how that flavor differs from what I normally make. Next, you're going to need a cup of oil. You can use whatever oil you prefer. I'm using canola. And then you're going to need spices. I'm using the same spices as I used in the granola, and that is pumpkin pie spice. I'm adding extra cinnamon and extra cloves. And then the other thing you're going to need is salt and vanilla. The recipe doesn't call for vanilla, but I always put vanilla in all my baking goods. I just figured, why not? Of course, the star of the show is pumpkin. Now, one day I hope to have my own pumpkin for my garden, but until that day, I'm using this brand and I love it.
You can really add whatever canned puree pumpkin you prefer. Just make sure that it's the puree and not the pumpkin pie filling. All right, so I know that these are nonstick pans, but I am going to butter and flour it because I have trust issues. No, but I just want to make sure because these have been used so much that it's not going to stick. In a medium-sized bowl, you're going to mix all of your dry ingredients, including your spices. Now, I usually add more spice than what the recipe calls for. Once you bake it, the flavors become muted, so you want to make sure that you add a good amount of spice so that that flavor really comes through. Once all the dry ingredients are well mixed, you're going to set that pan aside. In another large bowl, you're going to mix your sugars, oil, pumpkin puree, vanilla, and eggs. Then you're going to mix all of this up really well. You can use a mixer for this part, but I find that mixing it by hand is a quicker process for me. Then you're going to add your dry ingredients to the wet, and you're going to stir this just until it all comes together and there are no large lumps. You don't want to overmix or it will cause your batter to become dense and tough when you bake it. Once the batter comes together, you're going to divide it as equally as you can into your 2 prepared loaf pans. I'm telling you guys, if you try this recipe, everyone will be so impressed.
And that's all there is to it. So I'm going to put this in the oven at 350 degrees. It's going to bake for around an hour or so. I usually start out with 50 minutes and then I will check it and add extra time as needed until a toothpick or whatever you're using comes out clean. The final recipe we're going to make today is a fall rotini salad, and it's a pasta salad. It's super, super good. The recipe is a little bougie, so I'm going to show you how to make it in a simpler way, and it stores really well for up to a week. So I usually meal prep with this in the fall, and I'll have lunch every day. So I will show you how to make this fall rotini salad and you're going to love it. Here are the ingredients that we are going to use today. So we have some spinach and shallots, Brussels sprouts, and a butternut squash. Here is a store-bought butternut squash. And look, this is one that I grew. Oh my goodness, it's so cute. It's actually a honey nut squash, and this is one of the smaller ones. I have bigger ones, but they're not quite ripe yet. But I'm going to compare the two and see how they taste. So the rotini, you can use whatever pasta you prefer. You can even make your pasta if you're so inclined. The spices today are going to be nutmeg, cinnamon, salt, and pepper. And then I always use this seasoning. I can focus. I also have some extra onion powder and garlic powder that I added in there. Olive oil, feta cheese, the pepitas that we used earlier, some garlic, and some butter. And that is it.
A big part of being vegetarian is trying out new vegetables. But y'all, I have to admit, it took me a long time to try butternut squash. And I think the reason is because I was really intimidated by how to prepare it. So I would buy it and it would sit for weeks, if not months, in my pantry. But I finally found this tutorial, and I don't remember where I found it, but it showed how to prepare this butternut squash, and it was like a game changer. What I really like about butternut squash is that the flavor is mild, it's slightly sweet, it's very filling, and it's so nutritious. My go-to way to prepare butternut squash now is to cut it in half like you saw me do, and then you're going to go around and take off all the skin of the squash. You can either toss that or I'm going to add it to my compost bin. And then I like to chop it into little cube-sized pieces. You can get bags that are pre-cut, but it's cheaper to just cut your own.
Right, taking this out to the compost.
On this day, I'm also making sourdough bread, and I'll have a video about this soon. Now I'm putting our pumpkin bread to bake at 350 degrees. You guys, that was my little honey nut squash, and it was rotten. Sad day. All right, so once you have put all the spices in, you're going to drizzle it with a healthy amount of olive oil and set that aside to be baked when the bread is done. Here I'm chopping up some treats for the chickens, and I love this part. Once I have the veggies ready to be baked, I am putting on a big pot of water to boil our pasta. And here you see me checking on the bread, and I do that constantly because I do not want to overbake it. Uh, while the water is boiling, I'm going to chop up our garlic and our onion, and I'm going to saute this in oil once the noodles have been drained. So I have been thinking a lot about the seasons changing and how everything seems to feel so rushed. I feel like I'm constantly busy, and probably because I have a busy life, but I just feel like everything is so fast moving that I often forget to take time and live in the present. I went in for soil at a big box store, and it was so crazy because I saw the Halloween stuff on one side, Christmas stuff on the other, and then in the middle were pumpkins. And I was like, what is happening? What season are we in? You know, we're so rushed to move on to the next big holiday, to plan for future things that we often forget to just live in the moment. And so I just want to remind you, as I try to remind myself, to savor this time and this moment and this season and focus on making memories right now.
thing that I like least of all about baking is checking on the goodies every 5 minutes because it's clean. I notoriously put the time, about 15 minutes less than what the recipe calls for because I'm so scared of over baking. All right, let me show you what this looks like. There they are. I so wish you guys could smell my kitchen right now. And I wish that I could share some of this with you. But since I can't share it with you, take my word for it. It is very, very good. You have to try it. If you do try the recipes, any of the recipes that are shown today, let me know what you think. Now, sometimes I will put a glaze over them and it will be powdered sugar, butter, and cinnamon, maple syrup. But since I don't have maple syrup, you guys saw me use the last of it earlier, I'm just going to put some butter over that and call it a day. Our water is boiling, so I'm going to salt the water. Then we're going to add our pasta. I can never remember how long to cook different pastas, and I would throw this in the trash and then I would be like, wait, how long? And then have to take it back out.
Now that the pumpkin bread is out of the oven, we can put our veggies in to cook. I turn up the heat to 400 degrees and you're going to check on them every 20 minutes. I find that it takes about 30 minutes or so, maybe slightly longer, for it to be done. As I was draining the pasta water, I remembered that I needed to reserve a half cup of that pasta water, and this time you'll actually use it. So into the pan that we cooked the noodles, you're going to add some olive oil and your garlic and shallots, and you're going to saute that. I add my seasoning at this point. The recipe calls for you to toast the pepitas in a separate pan, but here's where I have a little simplified hack. I add them straight to this pan that I'm sauteing everything else, and it actually comes out really nicely.
All right, while that cooks, we're going to harvest some fresh herbs to go in it. I can't do this one-handed. I have to chop and hold at the same time. But I'm going to add some chives. I will probably add some oregano, maybe some thyme. And I don't have enough parsley. Let's see where my parsley is. Yeah, that's my parsley. Okay, I might grab like one or two, but yeah, they're not ready yet. So that's all right. I'm going to add the herbs that I have and we'll make do with that.
So I've added the herbs to our mixture and I'm going to give that a good stir. Then I will add the spinach. You can add more if you like.
Here's what it's looking like. I'm just waiting on the vegetables to finish cooking and then we'll add it to that and we'll add feta and we'll be done.
Finally, we're going to add the finishing touches to our dish. We are going to add the chives and the feta. My philosophy about feta is that it makes everything better. Okay. It was a bad joke, but I had to say it. All right. So while I was finishing up, I thought, you know what? Some craisins would be really great in this. So that's why I'm adding it. The recipe doesn't call for it, but I figured that it would pair nicely, and you guys, it did. So you'll have to try adding this too.
Thank you for hanging out with me in my kitchen today as we baked some fall goodies. I hope that you found a recipe or several that you want to try.
I'm going to end the video with a view of my chickens enjoying the treat that I made them. I hope you all have a wonderful fall season, and I'll see you next time.